Every revolution has a scarce resource, a revolution of industry. In the 1700s, we had in the Industrial Revolution coal as the scarcest resource. When we moved from manual labor to mechanization, it required coal to, for example, turn water into steam. Now, today, we have a new industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, AI, Internet of Things, so many different digital forces that are driving totally new frontiers for business and society. And there is a new scarce resource, connectivity and compute. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm Pete. I'm joined with my colleague Drew and the Alumni Ventures team. And wow, we have brought together a few luminaries who are building in connectivity and compute. Alumni Ventures is one of the most active venture capital funds in the United States. And today we are laser focused on one of the most critical pillars of the United States' future. So we are going to delve into the urgent pace of innovation in connectivity and compute. We are going to touch on its economic impact, and we are really going to get into the transformative potential of startup innovation that is happening in this area. So let's get started. First, some disclosures. This presentation is for information purposes only and is not intended as an offer to sell securities. For more, go visit the link in the bottom, av/funds.com/disclosures. So with that, here is the plan. We're going to give a quick overview about the US Strategic Tech Fund and the team. We are going to give a quick primer on what this Frontier Fund is all about, US Strategic Tech. And then the big show, we are going to welcome our three panelists and get into some pressing questions. So with that, a quick background on the US Strategic Tech Fund. As I said, it is myself, Drew, and our AV board member, Laura. This is a fund that is all about bringing individuals like you all together, a growing community that is laser focused on some of the most critical areas of US strategic interest. Drew and myself, we come from very deep policy and entrepreneurial civic backgrounds. And so we are the bedrock of the fund that brings a lot of not just investment rigor and background, but deep, deep care for the United States and its future. So now on to the US Strategic Fund itself. The Strategic Tech Fund is a new vehicle for Alumni Ventures. It is backing some of the most pressing, as I said, areas of US tech interests. And we are building a really exciting portfolio of companies that are laser focused on fortifying vital shifts in the United States, that are harnessing emerging technologies, and that are making a lot of the innovations more accessible to the broader public. And we do have one of our portfolio CEOs joining us today. So we're very excited to introduce some of our panelists. First, we have Brian Mengwasser. He is the co-founder and CEO of EdgeScale. Brian is about as bright as they come on connectivity. He is the co-founder of EdgeScale. He is formerly a vice president at Dish Networks and built some of the absolute infrastructure, the backbone of United States connectivity across 5G. He founded a company previously in wireless communications, had a leadership position at one of the larger satellite industry entities out there. Brian is an expert on connectivity. Next, we have another luminary is Aaron Reinhardt. Aaron is formerly the chief security architect at a Fortune 4, one of the biggest companies on the planet, United Health. Aaron is a veteran of solving complex engineering challenges. He's been involved in pushing entirely new frontiers of industry and healthcare and insurance, so very dynamic talent. And he's been a pioneer in some of the frontiers of engineering in these compute and connectivity areas. He's also oftentimes leaned on as a thought leader by some of the most venerated and consequential outlets out there across media and across government. And third, we have a pioneer, a thought leader, a very early employee at Palantir, Tom O'Brien. Tom joined Palantir in 2010. He's been across the organization's government roles, government and commercial roles. He also has a deep competency in themes that will come up today: manufacturing, context, industry, connect, ecosystems, and a word that will come up, edge and edge computing. So we are thrilled to welcome now to the panel Brian, Tom, and Aaron. And wow, what a discussion we will have ahead. So with that, we can jump right into some of our first top of mind considerations. And this is a question for everyone. Brian, maybe we'll start with you. Why do you believe that connectivity and compute are going to be the scarcest resources in this fourth industrial revolution? Brian, let's kick it over to you.
Yeah, great question, Pete, and thanks for organizing this and having us here. Excited for a pretty exciting conversation. Why is connectivity and compute important for us? Why is it scarce? Obviously, I think we've all seen the kind of surge of artificial intelligence capabilities, the way that we can start to use software and information more meaningfully. And all of that relies on compute and connectivity. We don't get to any of those outcomes without having the right infrastructure in place. And so I think increasingly we're seeing that is actually rate limited. It's not the size of the model or how quickly we can get to a new version, it's how quickly we can deploy it. And it requires that kind of infrastructure and resource.
Great. Let's pull in Aaron here. Aaron, tell us about why you think we have a scarce resource on our hand.
Well, there are a lot of these industries that, some of the most strategic, centers of value in the United States are in our strategic infrastructure that are just, there's ripe for opportunity. We tend to, Brian and I were talking yesterday about this, that, some of the best, these core industries like healthcare or insurance, or things like Amtrak and rail, right? They're so kind of far behind on the technology spectrum, but they deliver some of the most critical things for the country. And the connectivity and compute is a challenge. It's getting them up to where they need to be to move the country forward is going to be a challenge, but also ripe for opportunity in the mix.
Tom, you've had a front row seat at Palantir and a unique perspective on connectivity and compute. Why, from your perspective, are connectivity and compute some of the scarcest resources that we will see in this new fourth industrial revolution?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pete. I think building on what Brian and Aaron said, connectivity and compute work great in the cloud today. Like, you can have access to a lot of flexible compute. You can get to it through the internet. Everybody's happy. But when, at Palantir, we think a lot about data, we think a lot about logic, we think a lot about what people are doing with the data, the actions they're taking, and how that all makes kind of a decision loop for the operators. And it's been a large challenge of enabling industry to bring that data, that logic, those actions to people so they can make decisions. And then you think about moving outside of this world where you have all of this well-functioning compute and connectivity further into the industry, further into the factory, further into the field. And all of a sudden, those operators that don't even really want to think about data, they don't really want to think about models. Now they're having to think about how are they going to connect the model to their device. Now they're thinking about where's the compute going to live for that model. I mean, it's asking a lot of the people in the field. And so the scarcity is going to be in the functionality, I think, of the the compute and the connectivity at the edge and the ease of use and the scalability. So that's why we're excited about pushing into it. Is doing it right is going to, I think, change the dynamics of how people can make decisions at the edge.
Ryan, you are a serial entrepreneur. Every entrepreneur dedicates their life to a space that they care about. You are dedicating your life to this scarce resource, to connectivity and compute. Why? Why are you devoting your life to it? What is EdgeScale doing?
Good question. So I'm on a personal mission to make the world a better place. For me, that means smarter, happier, more productive place, and that starts with the exchange of information, which is all about connectivity. Increasingly, I think connectivity and compute are like two sides of the same coin, because every time we exchange a packet, we're also processing it. And to the extent that we can actually blur the lines and process it as we're moving it, it becomes much more efficient system. But I think I got hooked in the space pretty early on, working in satellite tech, because it underpins so much of what we're doing, right? Like you watch the game on the weekend, and that television feed probably transited several satellite systems, several fiber systems, and nobody really gets it. And so it felt really to me like a ripe area, to Aaron's point, to say, let's improve this, and maybe we can benefit all the applications and the intelligence we can get out of it at the top. And just the more that I dig, the more that I find. So a decade later, I'm still here, going further and further as far as I can.
We've dug in a little bit already to AI, a pillar of this fourth industrial revolution. It's advancing quickly. Tom, when you consider the advances that we've all have seen with our own eyes, how have those advances in Gen AI changed the way that you are thinking about Industry 4.0 at this time?
Yeah, good question. So I think, at Palantir, when we think about enabling the operators with AI, we think about bringing together all of those pieces that I talked about before. Data is a huge part, logic, actions. That's what allow people to use data to make decisions, to make their organization run better. And so when you inject Gen AI into the equation, all of a sudden you have another entity that can take advantage of that connected data. You have another entity that can take advantage of that kind of same control plane, if you will, of information that the human wants to take advantage of. So now you have the human operating with an AI able to suddenly traverse that kind of graph of information much more efficiently. That's I think the first observation we had. The second one is as it pertains to Edge and Industry 4.0, a lot of the promises of Industry 4.0 are suddenly much more possible. Like the things we can do with data coming off of a machine are so much more imaginable now that we can use breakthroughs in Gen AI to process that data and to serve it up in a meaningful way to operators. So those are kind of two observations in the advances, and it's really made kind of for us like a very ripe moment to use Gen AI, not only in our core parts of our business, but also in the newer parts of our business.
The E word, edge, just came up. This is one way of going deeper and further into the factory. When we talk about edge, Aaron, what does that mean to you? You're someone, you've worked at some of the largest companies on the planet. You've had exposure to some of the biggest markets on the planet, healthcare being just one. When we talk edge from your vantage point, what are we talking about? What sectors, what company types are we most likely to see the most impact from edge?
Well, so I see that as, I just want to comment on that's also something that Thomas said that, ease of use is really kind of going to be one of the biggest challenges, I think, going forward with these like generative AI. Some of these newer technologies is that there's this huge gap between the technology that enabled a lot of our strategic infrastructure and these newer technologies, and not only is it disruptive to bring them in, but if it's not easy to use and consume in the direct application, it'll be difficult. I think about edge computing. I also think about our edge in general and connectivity with the edge. I think about that as well as application to certain types of businesses that traditionally have challenges due to connectivity and compute. And I think that that's where a lot of the opportunity is. I think healthcare sometimes can be one of those areas, and just because of the nature of a lot of how healthcare is delivered, it's and the sort of, I used to call it the tax that comes with healthcare. Like the healthcare information comes with such a high cybersecurity burden. And in the world of national security, you can like close off your system. So in the world of sort of banking and finance, there's like reverse insurance, and people get their money back eventually. But once this healthcare information is exposed, then you can't get that back. It's out there. It's gone. So I think coming back to well, I guess where I started is that the challenge is not the technologies, but it's applying them to those industries and making it easy to consume. And those last two are very difficult things to surmount.
Brian, maybe I could bring you back in for a moment on the difficulty to consume point from Aaron. When you think about why it is difficult to consume insights on the edge, what's your answer?
I think the difficulty is most felt when the systems become more expansive. So we were talking earlier about how like I still am fighting to get my phone to connect to my car. I don't know if anyone has that experience, but imagine you're in a hospital and now you have 500 things that are connected, need to be connected, and you have to rely on that to get a good outcome for your patient. And what if it doesn't work, right? Like the maintenance costs, just the number of systems kind of clashing together causes a big problem if it's not been put together well and what we call abstracted, meaning it works, but you don't have to worry about it. And I think part of it is the way that part of the root of the problem is the way that software is actually moving quite a bit faster. So we expect to see these, familiar experiences, downloading apps and they just work, connecting to systems and asking a question and getting the answer. We expect to see those in some of these other industries, but because it's built on connectivity and compute that was kind of like single track, it was set up for one purpose and not well abstracted, means it's hard to change. And so I think you're getting this kind of a couple of things happening at once. Software is going really fast. The infrastructure is lagging a bit behind. And then when it's not put together well, you have this pain of like, of course I want these, I want wireless medical devices, not wired ones. I want ones that can easily, sync data to, a medical record system or something like that. And when they don't work well, we all start to suffer from it. And what's required to get on top of that is to stitch together and abstract, the underlying pieces so we can move as fast as we want to move.
Tom, a question for you, use cases. We've touched on some. We just went to the hospital for a use case. Amtrak and rail has come up. When you look forward, when you look out into the future, are there use cases for edge that leap out, that excite you in particular?
I mean, yes. It's hard to know where to start. I think every factory is kind of an obvious place for us to start. But maybe the unifying theme is places where you're trying to kind of model the physical world. And so that's something that we as humans do all the time. You know, we look down the street, think about which way we're going, see the cars coming, we see the lights, other people, and then we make a decision about how to move. And you know, that's what people do when they're working their jobs on the factory floor. That's what people want AI to do alongside them when they're trying to automate those decisions. And so the more you model correctly your physical world, the better decisions you can make off of it, and the more automated those decisions can be. And what we're doing is just pushing further and further into the physics of what we can model. And that's kind of the exciting use case broadly for us.
Let's talk timelines. So many dream scenarios, so many amazing connect and connectivity use cases. A few stand out to me. I love the idea of asking GPT, hey, why did the check engine light really come on yesterday? The factory floor use case, the manager calibrating tools, hey, what's going on with this tool? A city responder, I'm here in Chicago, we've got folks in Los Angeles and Cincinnati and Denver, a first responder in the city that's trying to understand what's going on with city gas pressure. There's so many different use cases that we have on the edge, but time is everything. How long until we can actually do these cool things that we are talking about? And Brian, maybe I'll start with you and work our way around to Tom and Aaron, just getting a little bit of a pulse from you on how far you think we are away from this. Brian.
This is very timely for me because my check engine light did actually go on a couple days ago. So I would like to know, I would like to be able to ask an LLM about that. I think it's going to take a while though. I think, you know, as Tom mentioned, when we're talking about use cases and scenarios that are not inside of a data center, which is effectively everything. That's how I would define the edge. There's a systemic issue that we have to facilitate the flow of information and the place to run our software so that we can get answers like that. So when I think about the car, is it that, you know, a car manufacturer should allow OpenAI or Meta to run a model in the car, or should it run near the car? Who's handling the flow of log data from my computer to help prompt the LLM properly to answer this question? There's like some unsolved problems there. And I think it's been said a couple of times, but it's also fantastic opportunities, because by solving those problems, we can now take all of the capability that we're seeing in the software space into the real world to affect everything from, you know, something as simple as our car to something, you know, with infinitely more complexity like a factory line.
Tom, do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, all the pieces we know how to do, which is what makes it so attractive. Because when you look at one problem set, one outcome, one use case, you put Aaron, myself, and Brian on the team, like we all kind of have the different pieces and we can put it together. But then you go to the next problem and all of a sudden it looks a little bit different, and the data exchanges are a little bit different. The regulatory issues are a little bit different, and you're starting from, you know, from the first floor again. And so that's what needs to be solved, I think, is how you do it in a repeatable fashion.
So Aaron, if we're on the first floor now and we're talking timeline to get to the top floor, the penthouse, the pinnacle of possibility, how long? Or near, far?
I think Well, I don't know. I think it's neither near nor far. It's a spectrum of between, and it's totally dependent upon the context around use cases in the particular industry. When I think about the check engine light, I think about now on the first floor, and I think about the second floor and third floor, right? I think about like, there could be a generative AI application to understand the engine life, but what about a problem in the car? A problem in the car is different. May be occurring outside of an indicator in the car. Problem indicators in the car are predetermined, predefined, pre-engineered by the people who designed the vehicle and the computer within it. But trying to understand why is my front right wheel shaking and the engine light is not on, or there is no indicator. I think so. I think the second floor and third floor, it's about empowering the human with better context and understanding. I think that's where you're going to see the most bang for your buck in the second and third floor, is giving the human better context. That's what we're doing now with a lot of the generative AI applications, is giving, like if you're driving a train, trying to understand, giving that better understanding of why I'm seeing a problem or why a certain event indicator or a signal is the way it is. I think that's really where a lot of power is. And I think, Tom mentioned something I think is critical to getting us to level 4, 5, 6, is that the regulators have got to maintain pace. They've got to be there to enable, because if we're driving speed into the engineering to be able to deliver these use cases, we still have to be on the same page with regulators and have to be on the same page with those use cases. So I think that is something not to lose sight of.
Let's talk what is at stake. Clearly, connectivity and compute, these are now twin gatekeepers, a bottleneck, a obstacle for realizing many different colors of progress, whether that's AI driven, whether it has to do with Internet of Things. CNC is a center stage gate. When we think about what is at stake for the United States, how important it is to overcome this gap, what are we facing? What is, from your perspectives, entrepreneurs, operators at some of the world's most renowned engines of American interest, what is your perspective on what is at stake? Brian, let's start with you. Tom, and then Aaron, we'll close it out with you.
So I think a good way to frame this is by anchoring around the current situation. So, at home, our home Wi-Fi, we can set up a guest network. Some Wi-Fi systems allow you to block or put filtering controls and so forth on it. But for a lot of the industries that we're talking about here, we have networks and compute that are a decade or more old. They don't do any of those things. They were set up for a purpose that is long retired, and we're asking them to do a lot of other things, right? Like contextualize some information coming off of a machine and help an operator make a decision. And so on the one hand, I think what's at stake is that the gap widens. We miss out on some of the productivity gains that we could be otherwise getting. On the other hand, I think we're already feeling it, that there's an enormous back pressure to improve those systems or come with another way of applying these productivity gains, to these industries. So I think we get there in both cases, but I think it's creating an enormous opportunity. Like I said, obvious cases when they're staring you in the face, like why doesn't this computer update itself, right? Why doesn't this network allow us to treat traffic differently? It becomes immediately obvious that that's an opportunity to fix. And by fixing that, we allow all of these productivity gains to into the industry and hopefully benefit from all of that.
Tom, what's at stake?
Yeah, I think building on what Brian said, it's about disruption or not disruption, and the organizations that we know of that create, whatever you want to call our culture today, either they're going to keep up or they're not. They're going to change or they're not, and they're going to get disrupted or not. And if they get disrupted, maybe sometimes it's for a good outcome, but a lot of times it's for a bad outcome. And so that's what I think we're focused on with what's at stake. It's about the institutions that we rely on, maintaining continuity.
Aaron.
I think that honestly, I think the future of the rest of America, it depends upon these sort of more pillar type of industries wanting to fail and enabling them to fail in such a way where they can because that's the process of adopting new technologies, and these industries are typically not open to that concept, even though failure is a key part of learning anything and growing. So that's a key part of making it all work. So it's and that in order to get adoption, in order to get America to that next level of these industries, we're going to have to be able to accept that. Regulators are going to have to be, but it's the type of failure, right? It's like the process. It's not catastrophic failure. Nobody wants that, but it's small failures, fast learning and adopting, iterating through technology, and that's what a lot of people miss when they think about failure in technology. It's not about that. It's about failing small, but failing fast and learning fast. That way you don't have catastrophic failures. That's a key to being resilient. And I think that but everything else, the commercial industries, the private industry that revolves around these strategic industries, I think depend upon it's an ecosystem that is codependent. So I think that's what's at stake.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick break and share more about Alumni Ventures and our US Strategic Tech Fund. AV offers smart, simple, and accessible venture portfolios for individual investors. We build diversified portfolios with low minimums, co-investing alongside renowned lead investors. It's a strategy that has mobilized over $1.3 billion from our community of now more than 10,000 individual investors. With our US Strategic Tech Fund, you have the opportunity to invest in technologies that are critical in bolstering US national security and economic prosperity. We prioritize 3 key areas: homeland security, cyber AI and digital strategy, and lastly, space innovation. By investing in companies that are innovating in these areas, our goal is to enhance resilience in emerging threats and to support early stage ventures that will encourage sustained growth and technological progress in the United States. If you'd like to learn more, click the link below or visit av.vc. Okay, back to the presentation. A question to wrap us up on community. Alumni Ventures is all about building community and bringing together a group fascinated and conviction based around innovation. And so we love to bring people together. When you think about the community of builders, of operators that are reimagining connectivity and compute, any anecdotes, any comments about what the fabric of that community is like? Brian, maybe I'll go to you, and Aaron, if you've got comments, or Tom, you've got comments, come on in. We're all just curious what it's like to be building in this space and what the peers you're coming across are like.
Well, something Aaron said, really resonated with me, which is this idea of cross-pollination of ideas and way of working in different industries, because we all have software that has to run somewhere and we all have to transmit some data, right? So it makes sense to kind of compare notes and see how we can do that better. I can tell you from the networking side, from the telecommunication industry, we've had more of this attitude of let's prevent catastrophic failure by not making any changes. But then when I talk to Aaron, or I talk to people who have, you know, a depth of expertise in software and more resiliency, we say, no, every lost packet of the network is an opportunity to learn something. You know, so how can we take a software approach to improve the resilience by failing a little bit in order to learn? I think that's really has transformative benefits, because you get kind of stuck in your own silo, but as soon as you start exchanging ideas and adopting different ways of working as part of this community, I think there's enormous benefits.
Aaron, Tom, any comments on community?
My only comment is, you know, I think there's a general feeling that it's ripe. It's a ripe space to work on. You don't want to be early. You don't want to be late. It's got people. There's a lot of agreement that the tools are at our fingertips to make the changes we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah. Sorry. No, I think in terms of community, the builder community, the engineering community around this, I think this is the key things. That's, I mean, honestly, I mean, as an engineer, like in my mind, I think this is the coolest stuff to work on. I mean, come on. I mean, like, you know, this is planes, trains, and automobiles, right? I mean, this is, you know, writing software for those industries, advancing that, you know, is fun, but it has to be. But like Brian said, you know, we have to cross-pollinate a little bit from the edge of the tech world into some of those practices around culture. Culture is some of the most difficult thing to build and enable, but it becomes the super highway once it's built, delivering things. But it's about giving engineers safe space, making it psychologically safe for them to build and deliver, and building an ecosystem of support around them to deliver things fast, feel fast, you know. But the world of software engineering, I mean, it's human thought. But look what we've done with human thought with software, right? We can do more if we can build stronger support systems around. And that's what I've seen that's often lacking in some of those more strategic areas, is that the sense of community around building and enabling that super highway that we have in the rest of the tech world.
Indeed, we have extraordinarily powerful tools at our fingertips. Today, we have not only learned more about those tools, but we are now slightly all ahead of the curve on this entirely new frontier, this industrial revolution 4.0, the two scarce resources, connectivity and compute. We've heard from a successful entrepreneur building in that frontier. We've heard from two extraordinary operators, as we said, at some of the biggest and most important stages on the business and societal planet. And so a massive thank you to Brian, to Aaron, to Tom for sharing their time, for sharing their wisdom, and most importantly, sharing their civic mindset. Indeed, the time is now for building in this space, and we all thank you. We are all rooting for you for rolling up your sleeves and building community and building new frontiers. So with that, I thank Brian, I thank Tom, I thank Aaron for joining us today. And I invite my colleagues from Alumni Ventures to rejoin, and we will continue with the presentation as well as present some additional final materials. So with that, Brian, Tom, Aaron, thank you for joining us. And to continue in the webinar, I welcome back my colleague, Drew, and we will give a overview together with our wonderful colleague, Darren, on a little bit more about this U.S. Strategic Tech Fund. Today was a glimpse into this extraordinary community that we are building with Alumni Ventures as the platform. And Drew will give a little bit of context, not just about Alumni Ventures, but also maybe his own personal journey and story here. Drew's been with Alumni Ventures for some time now. So Drew, give us a little bit of that personal color and tell us more about Alumni Ventures, and then Darren will come in with more information as well.
Absolutely, Pete. Thank you for that. And wow, what a remarkable panel. I mean, thanks again to our panelists. I think, they might have dropped off by now, but we really appreciate, part of this community is bringing folks like that to the table for these conversations. We have those, for the community members. We also kind of have those behind closed doors where we're learning more as we kind of navigate this space. And you have an opportunity. We'd love to invite you, obviously, to this community of people that are interested in things like connectivity and compute, as well as the other focus areas of the fund that Pete touched on. As Pete mentioned, I've been with Alumni Ventures for over 7 years now. So if you look back in 2017 on this chart here, that's when I joined the firm. And so I've seen a lot of the growth of Alumni Ventures kind of in those past 7 years. And I just wanted to touch on that, of some of the successes and kind of growth metrics that we've seen. For those of you that may be new to the Alumni Ventures model or new to venture capital. So just a primer on us, we have 10,000 plus individual investors that are already within our platform across a number of our different funds. We are America's largest venture firm for individual investors, the #1 most active VC in the US and #3 in the world. So we're seeing a lot of deals, we're seeing a lot of opportunities, and we're learning a lot across a number of different sectors and stages and geographies. Since 2014, so a few years before I joined the firm, we've raised over $1.25 billion in capital, and that's allowed us to support over 1,300 different portfolio companies. And again, these aren't just opportunities that we're excited about as a portfolio company, but they are also a part of the community that's helping us learn and navigate this space going forward. We are supported across a large team, so it's not just Pete, Darren, and myself. You saw the team slide earlier, but we're also supported by 40 full-time investors on the back end and about 90 other full-time employees that are helping us on a number of different fronts. So we have a really strong muscle here that's supporting Alumni Ventures, and I will pass it off to Darren, and he can dive into it a little bit more.
Thanks, Drew and Pete. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about what it means to be an investor with us, how the fund works, a little bit about nuts and bolts. Haley, would you mind sharing on the chat the link if someone wants to schedule a call to learn more? Happy to go into some more detail. But really, in a nutshell, big picture, the fund, there's many ways you can invest with us. So the minimum investment for the fund is $25,000, max is $3 million, very broad window there. And a lot of people invest directly with us. About a third of our investors invest via a self-directed IRA, because that 10-year time frame of the fund tends to line up with a lot of folks' long-term or investment horizon for retirement. We also have a lot of investors that come in through a trust or entity. And finally, for folks that are non-US based investors, we have an offshore vehicle. So a lot of flexibility there for folks to invest into the fund. So, how does the fund work? Basically, the fund is structured as a 10-year fund with one investment in, one capital call. So whatever you invest, that's your total commitment to the fund. It'll take about a year, 12 to 15 months for the team to invest that capital into about 20 venture-backed companies. We reserve some of that capital as well for follow-on rounds into those companies later. And then basically, as those companies exit throughout the life of the fund, generally through acquisition or IPO, we'll get the proceeds from that sale and return the money along the way to the investors. So one investment in, distributions throughout the life of the fund, but we don't know what the dates of those will be. And then finally, the fund will close when the last company exits, which could be year 10, 11, when that last company exits, the fund will close. Fee structure, we charge the equivalent of a 2% annual management fee. For 10 years, the total management fee is 20% for the life of the fund. That's paid with your initial investment. 80% of the fund or your investment is invested in these companies. And then as those companies exit, the capital is returned to the investors. If it's a profitable exit, meaning you as the investor get back your cost of capital in that company, plus any management fee allocable to that investment, anything over and above that would be profit, split 80% to you, 20% to us for profit share. So profit share happens as companies exit, it's called deal carry. And like I said, we're very flexible in the way that you can invest with us. The fund is going to be closing at the end of October is the final subscription deadline. But for folks that decide to invest with us before the end of August, you'll actually get a 10% reduction in your management fees as part of our loyalty rewards program. So, it's an incentive for folks to let us know earlier in the capital raise. That helps the team also have some more visibility into how much capital we'll be deploying as well. So, happy to talk more about that in some more detail. We'll follow up with you with an email with some information on the fund as well. But please schedule a call to learn more. Love to talk to you. Thank you.
Today's webinar was a taste test, a glimpse into the engines of innovation that the U.S. Strategic Tech Fund will be focused on. Earlier this year, we had a webinar about nuclear energy. Drew and myself just got back last week from the Idaho National Laboratories. This is a team that is laser focused on critical technologies empowering the United States. That is a invitation to schedule a call and learn more from Darren and the team about what we are working on over here. This is a community after all, and everyone that is joining today can be a valuable part of that community, can be a value add to the kinds of entrepreneurs, the kinds of operators that you saw earlier. So with that, we do the opportunity to cover a few questions that may have come in. So Drew, why don't you capture any questions that might be out there?
Yeah, thank you to everyone that sent questions in. I know we're kind of at time here, so I'll try to consolidate a lot of these questions and hopefully kind of one or two. A lot of questions around AI, artificial intelligence. So Pete, maybe give your perspective on kind of how we're thinking about that market, maybe within the context of connectivity and compute, but how we view AI as kind of an investment strategy.
Yeah, so we have AI as one of three major pillars to the fund. Really, we consider AI exactly what Brian Mengwasser, the CEO of EdgeScale, described it as, which is really a technology about productivity and unlocking productivity. So when we assess any company at Alumni Ventures, we are tapping into many different what we call scorecard considerations, and AI is no different. We're very disciplined in how we consider suitability, not just for the theme, but for the actual asset. In other words, not just the sector, but the underlying business model. And so without getting too detailed about Alumni Ventures and our proprietary assessment scorecard, AI is subject to the same investment criteria that we considered for the 1,000+ different companies that are in the AV portfolio. But AI is absolutely going to be a major pillar to the U.S. Strategic Tech Fund. We consider it part of the digital capabilities that the United States must build in. When you look at all the different executive orders coming out, clearly AI is a top of mind consideration, and we're excited to lean more into it with a disciplined approach. So Drew, any other questions?
No, I think that covers most of them. Happy to take questions as they come in. I think we have a number of avenues that those can be sent in, and we're always happy to discuss those.
Darren, there is just a question. Again, this is more about timing and mechanics. So, when are the closes, and what different types of sounds like the question's mostly about what types of contributions or what types of capital can be provided to participate. So timing and structure.
Yep. So the fund right now we're just kind of really in the beginning of the capital raise period. The end of August will be our first close, and that'll be where folks will be entitled to a fee reduction of 10%. We'll have a second close for the fund at the end of September. That would give investors a 5% reduction in fees. And then folks that come in by the end of October would be our standard fee schedule. And again, there's a number of ways to invest. Most common is folks invest directly into the fund. You sign a subscription agreement electronically, and you can fund that with a check or wire, ACH, whatever works best for you. About a third of our investors come in via self-directed IRA, and then we can do something with a trust or entity or offshore vehicle as well. So a lot of flexibility there. happy to be more specific on a call and answer any questions people have about their specific, portfolio as well.
Thank you, Darren, and thank you everyone for joining. Again, the link to schedule a call is in the chat. Highly recommend clicking that and learning from Darren more about what we have on the frontier. And on behalf of all of Alumni Ventures, we thank you for joining today's webinar on connectivity and compute, clearly scarce resources of this fourth industrial revolution. And stay tuned for more programming coming out from the U.S. Strategic Tech Community and Fund. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.